I literally lived in a bubble my entire life. I had to get out. I literally had to break free. So I literally went to the other side of the world, and that's what helped me. And through that, I discovered that I really love helping other people and bringing joy to other people, because I just realized how blessed I have been in my life, and I want to be able to share that with other people who haven't had the same experiences.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 34 of the Andrew Deitch podcast. I said in the last one that my next episode was going to be a weekly update, but to be honest, there wasn't a whole lot that I wanted to say this week. But thank you guys for your overwhelming support. I really appreciate you folks. My download numbers have slightly plateaued a little bit, but also I've been uploading a little less frequently than I was since I had to have my life back a little bit and I was traveling. But I think a lot of people would be discouraged by that, but I am very encouraged that at least it's a plateau and not a decrease in downloads. And you guys are the bomb, and I'm getting positive messages about the podcast every day, so thank you guys so much. And I'm recording this in a parking lot right now, and the lady beside me just started blasting Nirvana, and it was this little Asian lady, so that just made me really happy. But anyways, my guest today is my friend Lauren Boyce, and Lauren is a world traveler. She's a missionary. She spent 6 months living in Thailand a while ago, and she spent the past, I think it was 11 months living in a cabin in North Carolina with no electricity. Pretty insane, right? And she was there learning about all kinds of cool stuff, like how to build roads and welding and fixing cars and all kinds of stuff. And it's definitely not the typical stuff you would expect a suburban white girl to know. And that's because Lauren is definitely far from your typical suburban white girl. Before she started recording, she was like, I don't know what we're going to talk about. I'm not that interesting. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, you've spent like a chunk of your life living in Thailand. You've got all these crazy, interesting skills now, and you have a really interesting point of view on a lot of things people will never experience. So, needless to say, this podcast was super interesting to me. And actually, I've been wanting to have her on the podcast from the beginning. Like, when I decided that this was a thing that I was really going to pursue, I made a list of people that I wanted to be on, and she was always at the top of that list, no lie. And she just moved back to Georgia last week, so I had to have her on. This podcast was super fun. Lauren and I talked all about traveling, effective mission work, all kinds of other stuff. But I'm going to let Lauren explain all that herself. So give it up for my friend, Lauren Boyce. Boom. We're live, Lauren.
Hi.
Does it feel any different?
Yeah, everything is different now.
Everything has changed. So this is Lauren's first podcast, and kind of like don't know what to expect, right?
Right.
It's pretty weird at first, to be honest. Like especially the first couple that I recorded, like, cause I was the host. I'm supposed to kind of know what to do, and I was just like, how do I even start this? But like after the first 2 minutes of every podcast, it's like so natural. So
You just kind of forget about it.
Exactly.
Perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
Still got like a minute and a half to go.
We got a minute and a half. Let's just wait and not talk. No, I'm just kidding.
Perfect. That'll make a great podcast.
Great radio. So like I said, I've already kind of like given a little intro of like who you are and stuff, but just so people can kind of hear it in your own words, like pretty much just like give us a quick like life story of Lauren. Like, where did you grow up? Where were you born? You weren't born here, right? You were born in... Oh, you were?
I was born in Atlanta.
You were born in Atlanta?
Yeah. I've lived in the same house my entire life.
There we go, me too.
Yeah?
Yep, we're in it right now. It's pretty weird.
That's crazy, this room?
Yep, yeah, pretty much the whole time. I think actually when I was like 1 or 2, or... No, my parents actually moved in here before I was born, yeah. So...
Same.
Pretty weird. Kind of creepy, actually. Like, my friend the other day, she told me, she was like, I've moved 24 times. And
That's
I was
crazy.
like, what? She was like, yeah, it's weird because I can't like stay put for 1 year. Like, it's creepy for me. She's like, I'm getting the itch. Like, I have to like move soon. And I'm like,
See, I've
that's
kind of
sick.
started getting that too because, growing up in the same house my entire life, like, and going to school, just like, and being around the same people forever, it just got really old. So, like, right after high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do for college. So I decided to go to Thailand for several months. And so it ended up being just shy of 6 months that I was there. And so while I was there, that's when I decided that I wanted to go to, or go into missions, I should say. And that because I was working with 2 different organizations that were over there. And so, but I knew that I didn't want to do anything until I went to school and learned more about what I was doing, because being 18 years old, I had no clue what I was doing, and they were just giving me a bunch of busy work. And so I went to school at a Christian missionary school, but for community or sustainable community development. And then
What is that actually?
It's kind of like learning how to develop communities in impoverished or rural areas. And so, so like, there's different kinds of missions. There's relief, rehabilitation, and development. And so for like relief, that's like a really short-term type thing. And so like, you come in, like, that's right after a natural disaster or, a war or whatever it might be, whenever something really bad happens. And then you come in and you give them immediate relief. And so those organizations and people are in and out really quick. Like, they're there for the immediate thing. Rehabilitation is kind of like the middle grounds of it. And they like, it's kind of like getting them back on their feet. So it's the like afterwards, like, people are okay, they're starting to like rebuild the buildings and stuff like that, and that still takes a long time, but it's still relatively short term. And then development is the long term, lifelong type thing. Like, you can't just walk into somebody, like, come over to a different country and like walk into their home and tell them, like, this is how you're going to do things. You have to do life with those people, and then like, you can show them other ways that might make their life better. And so, I forgot why I was talking about that.
No, but that's actually, no, I asked you like what your degree was, or whatever you were studying.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I was like,
so
what is that? And
sustainable community development. So that's kind of like the long-term end goal of trying to, get people from, one end of like a rural spectrum of like, being in a bad area or whatever, and getting them to a better ending, I guess. And so
that's really cool.
So, yeah. So, but then I decided I didn't want to go to that school anymore. And at that school, for like the degree, it was more so like sustainable agriculture. And so it's basically like teaching you how to be a farmer. But
that's really cool though, because that's something that like no one knows how to do now.
Yeah, I mean, it was really cool, and it's a really neat program, but just I had several problems with the school and with the program and things like that, and it cost way too much money. And so I actually, through that school, I heard about this program called the Master's Mission, and it's in Robbinsville, North Carolina, and they are a development like missions organization. And so they're looking to send people overseas, and people who are willing to be there, like die overseas, and people who want to be there for the rest of their lives. And so it's a really cool program where they actually do sustainable development too. And so someone who knew of the program, he just kind of mentioned it to me when I told him what my degree at the time was. And so he told me about it. And at the time I just kind of like wrote it off. But when I decided I didn't want to go back to the school, I was like, hey, like maybe I should look into that a little bit more. But so for the past year, I have been living in this little cabin in the woods. It's like right up on Little Snowbird Mountain. It's actually, I say it's Robbinsville, North Carolina, but it's actually outside of it. And so a lot of people think that Robbinsville is like considered like the end of the world, it's like the middle of nowhere, but then this is even outside of that. And so it's just like, it's like a 5 or 6 mile dirt road just up this mountain. And then me and my brother actually did it together. And so we lived in this little cabin that had no electricity, and we learned a lot about just the Bible, and just kind of like grew in our faith in that sense, but then also just learned a lot about sustaining communities. And so we learned, like, we started off by learning how to build roads and dams. And then like from there we went into like construction. We did a diesel mechanics program and welding, and I don't know, it's just like just any kind of trade that like you could like really think of. We did a ton of woodwork. So because we didn't have electricity, we had to cut down our own wood and like chop it up and put it in a wood stove, and that's what kept us warm during the winter.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it was really interesting because it's like, you know, like you could like see a tree and you're like, oh, well, I'm really cold, so gotta cut that down. And so between like cutting it, chopping it, you know, all that, we did a ton of woodwork, and we also learned how to use a sawmill. So basically like making boards and stuff.
Whoa.
So that was interesting.
That's really cool. That's something that people don't even like think about. Like when they think of like a wood plank, they're not, I've thought about that before. Is like, how did they get like a round tree into like square long planks? Like,
yeah, it's crazy. It was really interesting though, but and just like everybody, like this program is really cool because it's run by this family. Well, actually 2 families started it, but one of the families has like passed away. It started about 37 or 38 years ago, I think. But when they actually bought this property, they couldn't even drive onto it or like walk onto it to see it. They had to take a helicopter over it because it was literally just the ridge of a mountain. Jeez. And so like it was nothing. So every single thing that is up there was done completely by them and then by the people that they brought through this program because they felt a need. They saw that like their generation kind of dropped the ball as far as missions. They started sending out a lot more short-term missionaries. And, you know, people who are coming back. And I mean, short term in the mission world is kind of anything under, you know, 10 years. So like people think short term missions are like, oh, you know, the 2-week trips that you go for church and things like that. Yeah, that is short term missions. But honestly, those trips are more about the people who are going on the trips than they are about the people they're going to serve. And so, and they're really,
people get real mad when you talk about that too.
Yeah.
Like people get real mad. I had, I did a podcast with Elizabeth Ward. You know her, right?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I did a podcast with Elizabeth. She was like episode 8 or something, like one of the first episodes. And we talked about that a little bit, how, you know, a lot of mission work that you hear about as far as, oh my gosh, we went on this mission trip to Guatemala as a family or something. And it just seems kind of silly a lot of times because it seems like a lot of times it's more about the experience of the person rather than actually making a huge impact.
Yeah, it's crazy because, you know, like you go over there and like you think that you're doing all this good. And then like, you know, like you're going over there and you're building a school or a church or rebuilding houses or whatever it is. But then really, and like, you know, you might be passing out, you know, candy or presents or whatever you have. But really, like, you're kind of going over there and you're showing them that you're like Santa Claus. And like, you're almost rubbing in their face that it's like, look at how much money we have. We raised all this money to send ourselves on a trip and to send ourselves to bring this. And it's like, here, we're giving you this. Like, here's all of our handouts. And now we're going to leave. When you leave, what happens after that? They go back to their normal lives. And you know, but like, and also like if you go over there and you're building, like, you know, building a church or a school, that all sounds like really good, you know, and the bigger idea of it. But really, like, you should be equipping the people to be able to build their own schools and their own churches or houses or buildings or whatever you're trying to do. You want to help them, you want to equip them. You don't want to just come in and like teach them that like if they stay impoverished, then people are going to come do everything for them. You want them to actually be able to sustain themselves. And so like that's kind of a part of sustainable community development is like you don't want people to be riding off of, you know, I guess like a patriarchy of like, you know, having like somebody like, you know, like the father come in and like give them the kids what they need and then just leave, you know, like it's worse for the community as a whole.
That's what I was going to mention. I kind of talked about this a little bit with Elizabeth. I was listening to this one podcast with this guy named Justin Wren. Have you ever heard of him before?
No.
He's not necessarily a missionary per se because I don't think he's a Christian, or religious at all. I could be wrong. I don't know. He didn't talk about that really on the podcast, but he was like a UFC fighter, and then he made it like his life mission to like help the pygmies in the Congo. And so he's like gone over there. Now he is there like for like half the year because a lot of the thing is he's raising money for the organization through his fighting, because when you fight in the UFC you can make a lot of money, obviously. Mm-hmm. So he's put like tons of money back into it. But anyways, part of the thing he was talking about was a lot of times when you come in and just give free handouts, it actually can kind of like destroy the community because like if you just go in and give a bunch of food, then like a lot of times the stores or whoever is getting food or selling food or whatever that affects them in such a negative way, because how are they supposed to survive when the community is just getting tons and tons and tons of free food?
Yeah, and then also what happens a lot of times is you can come in and give them like, you know, a huge gift of food or whatever, and the people are like, wow, yes, like we'll pass this out. And then like what they do is they turn around and they just make a profit on it. You know, you might not actually be able to distribute the things that you're actually bringing unless like you're the one giving it to them. But it's really sad, because like a really common testimony that I've heard is people go like to places like Africa, and then little kids just run up to them and hold their hands out, and they're just like, you know, like, what'd you bring for me? You know, and they're just like asking,
Whoa.
you know, like, what do you have for me? Like, that's what they expect when they see a white man show up, you know, that like they don't feel like the actual love like coming from the people. And if you're gonna go, because like, I mean, there's a lot of humanitarian, you know, aids and stuff that'll come in and do things like that, but from a Christian standpoint, that's not what you're there for. You're there to, you know, show the people that you care about them and you love them, and you're trying to represent Christ as best as possible. And on that note, you're also not trying to go there and just like automatically, you know, evangelize them and be like, oh, everything that you know is wrong. Like, you have to show them that you love them and you care about them. And how are you going to do that if you're only going for, you know, a week or two at a time and then you leave? You know, not like, you know, you just abandon them. That doesn't show love at all. It doesn't show that you care.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a vacation that also has like a feel good.
And then on that note, it's like people raise, you know, maybe $2,000 to go on a trip. I think that's maybe like an average for, you know, you're playing,
to be honest.
Maybe more. I don't know. I've never gone on a short-term trip like that. I mean, I guess technically my trip to Thailand for like 6 months is still kind of short-term, but not really.
Not by most people's standards. Maybe in the mission field, but not by most people's standards.
Yeah, and so, but for like the 2-week things, you know, it's like maybe a couple $1,000s, whatever it is. You know, like they send out letters, they bake cookies, make t-shirts, whatever it is. And then you spend the majority of that on your food and on the place where you're staying, and then your flight over there. It's kind of all about you. And then, you know, maybe you, like, some of your money is going into fund whatever, you know, you're kind of going there to do. But, you know, the large percentage of it is going towards your own experience. And then it's like, what could you do? You know, on an average trip, there's maybe 10 people who go together. And so then you multiply, let's say, we'll say $2,000 per person, you know, that's now $20,000 that you guys all just raised cumulatively. And how much, like, our money, like, the U.S. currency goes so far in other poor countries. I mean, maybe not in Europe, but, like, you know, like, especially in places like, yeah, I guess like impoverished areas, but you know, the U.S. dollar it goes pretty far in a lot of places, and especially the places where people are going for missions work. It's like they could do so much with $20,000, but instead, you know, like I'd say at least 16, 17,000 of that is just going towards the experience of the people, and then that's not a good testimony either. Exactly. You say you care about those people, but then you just
gonna leave.
Yeah. So.
So, like, to give people perspective, like, when you were living in Thailand, how much money would a typical, like, person, or even you, how much money were you spending, like, on a month, like, I don't know, to give people an example, like, a daily or weekly basis or something? Like, on food and...
Let's see. I'm trying to think, because this is, like, 3 years ago.
Yeah. Or just, like...
the Thai, like, their currency is called baht, and so 30 to 32 baht is about $1, and then for 30 baht I could get a meal, like street food, and so like I could get an entire meal for myself. So that's $1. So I mean, every day I ate for, you know, $2 or $3. Wow. And then I think so. My trip when I was there, it was actually divided into two because I had an injury and I had to come home and have surgery. But for my first trip, I was there for 2.5 months, and in that entire time, I spent somewhere like $800.
Wow.
Like, I mean, that's not including my my ticket over there or the plane ride. Yeah. But as far as being there, it was for rent. It was maybe like $150 a month. I mean, I was living with a girl, but that covered literally everything. You know, my room, my power, my water, everything that was there, air conditioning, all that fun stuff.
Wow. That's crazy.
So I spent $800 in that 2.5 months. I mean, and I can blow that in 1 month here, you know.
Easy. Like,
yeah,
for sure. That's, it's really fascinating because, I mean, you're talking about, like, raising $20,000 for, like, 10 people to go on a trip. on one hand, it's like, would those people raise $2,000 if they weren't getting anything out of it? Probably not. So on one hand, it's kind of like, okay, maybe even if somewhat of a portion of this is going to help, you know, maybe it nets out to a little bit of good, you know, maybe possibly. And I think that's like the, you know, I think people have good intentions. I don't think people are trying to necessarily, they just don't necessarily, you know, people aren't trying to have ill intentions or whatever. No, they all have good intentions, not. I think. Because why else would you go if you don't have good intentions, you know? I don't know.
But I mean, it's not necessarily, I mean, I don't, like, there's a book that's called When Helping Hurts, and it talks about people who go into other areas of the world, and, you know, they come in with good intentions, but it, you know, it kind of fails miserably for things that they didn't even expect. But, crap, I lost my train of thought. What were you just saying?
I was talking about like how people have good intentions, but they don't necessarily follow through, and like maybe a little bit of good comes out of it, but not really. And then you said when helping hurts. You're talking about when helping hurts.
Gotcha. Yeah, I forgot where I was going with that. I had some like point that I was gonna make, but then I had to give the background behind it. I lost the actual point.
No, it actually
it'll probably actually come back to me.
Yeah, it probably will. It is actually really, really fascinating though, because people don't understand the dynamics of these different places, especially when you're going to a country. You can, you know, they have lots of training before you go on like a mission trip or whatever, but not really tons. Like you'll have like a few meetings or whatever. And most of the time, you never really get a taste of what the culture is actually like, because you can't really understand what it's like until you're living with the people, living there for, I would say, at least a few months.
For sure.
Like within one or 2 weeks, like you're not really getting much out of it, which is weird.
Yeah. I know a lot of people that they say that they have, you know, just like a heart for these people, and they're like, oh, I love their culture, and, you know, like they go to Guatemala for a week or something. It's like, yeah, I mean, people can be really friendly for the first week that you show up. I mean, they don't have to see you ever again. It's like you don't actually truly get to know someone until you've actually spent time with them and you've lived with them, and you start to, you know, share their problems with them. And I don't know, like it's just, like living over there, it was just really cool because I actually got to get a taste of it, and I started I started meeting locals. You know, like I was living in a city, and there's a lot of foreigners who are over there, but a lot of my friends were Thai people who could speak English, and or who were learning English or something. And so like getting to know the locals and actually see what their values are, and, you know, kind of get the behind the scenes things. And it's just like, oh, like these are the good places to eat, these are the cool places to see, not just the touristy places. You know, it's really fun to be able to explore outside of it. But
yeah, I think also there's this, with the internet now, there's this wanting for people to be like global citizens, if that's like a thing, you know, where people want, because like for me, I have no interest in being like a tourist necessarily. It's a little bit, actually. I shouldn't say no interest, because some places it's like, cool, yeah, I want to see that, but like, you know, for example, like going to the Eiffel Tower, it's like, okay, cool, it's the Eiffel Tower, what am I going to do here besides like spend money and like, you know, whatever. I'd rather have like a cool experience or something like that, and like learn how other people live over there. You know what I mean? And I'm not even necessarily saying as far as like impoverished areas, but just exploring any new place. Yeah, exploring any new place. It's extremely fascinating for me to like talk to local people and see how they actually live and stuff. Like when I was an au pair, like I was living like with a family in a different country, so you get to see like how other people are living their life on another continent.
It's cool because it's like people are, like, you know, every culture is different, but people around the world are all so similar. Like when it comes down to it, we really all are human, and like we all just have the same, you know, tendencies. We all have a sin nature, and, you know, like there's good and bad to every single culture, but it's really cool just to see, because like you can meet people and it's like, wow, you're so different, but at the same time we're so similar too. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is really weird how when you can, you know, for example, I just got back like 4 or 5 days ago from my trip to like Tomorrowland, and at Tomorrowland there's more countries represented there than at the Olympics. There's more. It's the most. They make a huge concerted effort to make it extremely international. Obviously, you're not going to get a lot of people from impoverished countries and stuff because it's pretty expensive.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as international goes, they have a system in place where there's only a certain amount of people from each country allowed to come, essentially.
Really?
So, yeah, it's crazy. And they do that on purpose because they want it to be super international. Because if there wasn't that system put in place, the ticketing system is actually it's really difficult to get tickets because it's people want them so badly. Like, everyone wants to go. But in, like, small countries, it's cool. They have an ambassador program where if you're one of the first, I think, 5 or 10 people to purchase tickets, you also get an allotment to buy 5 or 10 more for friends that would want to come. Mm-hmm. So, like, if you buy yours, you can get more, and then you get to stay in this cool ambassador section of the camping. But anyways,
that's cool.
Yeah, it's really, really awesome. But anyways, it's weird because when you're, like, camping in this, it's called Dreamville there, all your neighbors are from different countries. Like, there's like Australians on your right, there's people from Japan like down the way, there's people from France next door, there's like, it's really crazy, and you hear all these different languages around you, but everyone is so similar because they're all doing the same kind of stuff. They're all sleeping in this tent, they're all eating similar food, like, it's pretty weird actually that, we think, oh my gosh, life must be so different over there, but not. When you boil it down, we're all humans, and we all kind of want similar things, and we might have our cultural differences, and that might affect our daily stuff. But
have you ever heard of couch surfing?
Yeah.
So there was all these couch surfing events that would happen in Chiang Mai, and there was this really cool place. It's called the Bus Bar, and it was like, an old Volkswagen 70s bus that they turned into a bar that's right on the river. So they had all these cool lights that were hanging up, but every Wednesday night they would have, couch surfing events. And so it's a place, where the host and the surfers could come and meet in a public place, so it wasn't as sketchy. But it was so cool because the majority of people who came there could at least speak English. And so I would go there, and I actually never couch surfed or hosted, but I would just go there and meet the people and hang out with whoever was coming through, because you kind of get to know some of the local people who are there and then who are living in. And
they're like friendlier to like Americans or whatever, or foreigners or whatever, because
everybody is foreign for the most part. Yeah. Actually, there weren't very many Thai people there. But, it's just like all the hosts were all foreigners who just happened to be living in Chiang Mai for whatever reason.
And so it was
cool just to see, like, just like, so how'd you end up here? Like, what are you doing? Like, where are you on your travels? And I just met some of the coolest people in the world just through that. And I actually had some like really, kind of like small world moments where it's like we knew some of the same people or whatever. Like, there's some girls that I did swim team with in my neighborhood, and I met their cousin there.
That's so absurd.
And like, he lives in California, but he was like, oh, I've actually been to your neighborhood. I've gone and visited them. I've swam in that pool. I was like, what? Are you kidding me?
It's literally so crazy how small of a world it is. Like, okay, so at Tomorrowland, I was, my friend Sonia, that I've actually, have I met her in person? Don't think so. I think we're only friends on Facebook. And she was like, oh my gosh, my friend Matt is at Tomorrowland. You should try to meet up with him. So I got his number and I like tried to meet up with him. First day, we never met up. Second day, we found each other though. And we were like, oh, cool, where are you from? He's like, oh yeah, I live in Chicago, but I used to live in Georgia. I'm like, no way, I live in Georgia. And he's like, yeah, I grew up in like Norcross. I'm like, no way, what? Me too. And he's like, yeah, I went to Norcross High School. I'm like, me too, what the heck? This is the craziest thing. It was like so absurd that like we were
y'all
like
there at the same time?
He was like a few years older than me, so I think he was like a senior when I was a freshman. So he's like a little bit older than me, but it was still really crazy. And like I knew a couple of people that he knew. Mm-hmm. And it's so weird. And it's so absurd. I was thinking about this the other day, that not everyone, but a lot of people, they tend to kind of just stick with their own friends, and like they might have the opportunity to like meet someone new or, make a new friend or whatever, but they kind of just like, hey, what's up, man? And just kind of like go along their way. And like, I always try to make a point to have a way to make some sort of connection, whether it's like following them on social media or like getting their number or whatever, because I always think it's so or like following them on Facebook or whatever it might be, because I always think it's so crazy how you can connect the dots of like how people know each other and stuff. That's one thing about this podcast. It's been crazy. Like, I'll have some random guest on. People are like, how do you know this guy? I've been friends with him forever. I'm like, I just met him like the other day and he's really cool, so I wanted to have him on the podcast. It's pretty interesting.
It is crazy.
But like, so at these couch surfing events, it was like all foreigners basically.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So, wait, so it's been like 3 years since you were in Thailand, right? Or 2 years? 3 years?
Yes.
Something like that?
Yeah, it's like
Very
2014 and 2015. So
gotcha. Nice.
2.5, 3 years.
Nice. And then when you came, dang it, I'm bleeding. So when you came back, that's when you decided to go into that. You went back to school and then you switched and you went into that program that you just got finished with, right? Pretty much, kind of?
Yeah. So
okay.
First year after high school was Thailand. Second year, I went to school at Toccoa Falls College. And then third year, I spent at the Master's Mission in North Carolina.
Nice.
And so I actually just finished that and have just finished moving all of my stuff home last night. So
there we go.
Yep.
That's awesome. So if like for people that are listening that are in high school, they're about to graduate, and they don't know what to do, we both kind of like had similar things where like for me, I went to college and then I left. And then you, like, right out of high school, like, didn't go straight to college. Like, what kind of, advice or words would you say to people that are listening that are, like, in high school and they don't really know what they want to do?
My advice for, I guess, anyone who's looking to take a gap year is do something beneficial with your life. Like some people, they just kind of get sucked into, like maybe they're a waitress or a waiter or something, like they're just like trying to make money and, but they're not actually pursuing their dreams or their goals or whatever it is. Not to say that to belittle those jobs at all. Like those are great, but, and everybody needs money. That's just a fact. But do something beneficial. Find the things that you're passionate about. Start to pursue them. Whether if you want to help people, there's lots of organizations where you can go help people locally. You don't have to go across the world, or you could go across the world. So you can do whatever you want, but just start pursuing the things that you're passionate about. If you have always wanted to take a painting class, start doing that. Just start pursuing those things. Do something new. Be willing to branch out and be willing to change, because you're never going to really grow if you aren't open to change. And that can be really intimidating, especially to people who are stuck in their little bubble. And that's how I was. I literally lived in a bubble my entire life, just in the same area. And then it's I had to get out. I literally had to break free. So I literally went to the other side of the world. And, that's what helped me. And through that, I discovered that, I really love, helping other people and bringing joy to other people, because I just realized how blessed I have been in my life. And I want to be able to share that with other people who haven't had the same experiences. And so, missions isn't for everybody. And, the medical world isn't for everybody. Whatever you decide to go do, just explore your passions and go, have fun too. Just go do something beneficial. Don't just get sucked into a rut, because it can be really discouraging to feel like you're not doing anything beneficial with your life, especially when everybody's asking, so where do you go to school? What are you doing? How, it's people aren't trying, well, at least most people aren't trying to offend you with those questions, but sometimes if you're not proud of what you're doing, it's those are the questions that you don't want to hear.
Exactly.
And I don't know. Just go do something fun, do something beneficial, be a good person also. True
that. We need more of that in the world for sure.
More good people. There's so much evil and hurt and pain just out in the world. You need more people who are willing to be a light and spread joy.
Yeah.
Because misery loves company, and so miserable people love to make other people miserable too.
Yeah. I've said this a lot on the podcast, a few, I think it's a weird common theme nowadays, that it's cool to be depressed or cool to be sad, oh, my depression fuels my art, or just I don't know. It's weird. This weird obsession with being discontent. Is that a word? Discontent?
Yeah.
It's a word. Yeah, it's a word. discontent with like your life and surroundings and stuff. And my thing is like, yes, it's hard to get to the place where you want to be, but only because you have to give up things that you're used to having, aka typically security and comfort. Like, you have to be willing to change, because unless you do something different, you're going to be getting the same results you always have gotten. And that's super cliche, but like my friend Connor, he was on the podcast, like, I think in the first, like, I can't remember. It's pretty early on. And he said, unless there's an opportunity for failure, then there's no opportunity for success. And I hadn't really thought about it that way. I've heard like similar quotes, but like it makes a lot of sense where if you're just staying on the safe side of things and like there's no possible way for you to fail, then there's probably also no possible way that you're really going to get anywhere.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people get just like stuck in that rut. Like you said, like being a waiter or, you know, working at a like in a service job or whatever.
That you don't want to have.
Exactly. Like a part-time weird kind of thing. And like my brother right now, he just finished high school and like all of his friends into college and stuff, and so he's getting that question like all the time, like, so are you in school and blah blah blah. And I had to deal with that for like 4 years, and I'm still having to deal with it sometimes. Like, you know, I'm young, so people are sometimes like, oh cool, so where are you in school or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
or where did you go?
Yeah, where'd you go, blah blah blah. A lot of times I can like kind of just shut it down pretty easily. I've gotten good at it because, you know, but the main thing is you kind of have to just be confident in whatever you're gonna say. And if you're not, then that should make you uncomfortable for a reason. Probably because you're not, you know, you are kind of just like going with the flow. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I think traveling has been the biggest way that I've, I don't know, learned stuff and figured out my own way. And when you completely abandon like everything that you know and your friends aren't there and no one's there that you need to impress or like act a certain way, you can just totally be yourself in front of these new people. It helps you
become more open-minded, and then you can relate to other people. You know, like I know that not everybody is going to hold to my values or my beliefs, and you know, that's perfectly fine. But I mean, you still have to be able to respect other people and their opinions, and just like don't, like I said, it goes back to being a good person. Just like don't be an asshole. Yeah. You know, like, and traveling is a really good way to do that. And I mean, I completely agree with, I guess kind of like going back. I mean, like when I was younger, I struggled with depression for a really long time. And it's because, like, honestly, it came down to, like, I was on antidepressants, you know, like you can say it's a disease, it's a, you know, chemical imbalance and things like that. But honestly, what it came down to was it was just me being selfish. And, you know, it was like I was living life for me, and like I was only out to make me happy. I didn't care what I did to make myself happy, even if it meant putting other people down. It's like that's what I was out to do. And then I don't even know like how or why, but like one day it just hit me. I was like, wow, you are so selfish. It's like, and started actually changing the way I thought about life and how blessed I really am. Just like I have 2 parents that love me, you know, I have friends and family that would, you know, give up their lives for me. It's like, I don't know, I've been blessed with so much. I've, you know, never gone hungry. You know, I've always had a bed to sleep in and, you know, like a place to call home. It's like there's so much tragedy that's out in the world. And for me, like I just realized, you know, how selfish I was, and then, you know, started to look and find the things in my life that were going well, and then actually, you know, use those to not just my benefit, but the benefit of other people. But, you know, like you have to be willing to change. So many people are just so closed-minded, you know, like if you're not a Christian, then I don't want to hang out with you. If you're not a liberal, I don't want to hang out with you. If you're not, you know, whatever. Yeah. It's like, so many people are just so closed-minded and they're so quick to get offended, but I don't know, it's really sad because it's like we all have the potential to get along and to, you know, help each other along the way, because I mean everybody is struggling and everybody has their own things that they're going through. But I mean, when it comes to you personally, it's like stop doing the same things over and over again and expecting a different result. You got to change something. You got to be willing to let things go. And with that, you know, look at the people who are like pouring into your life, you know, like I had to give up a lot of friends. There are so many people that like I just could not let go of because, you know, it's like we've been friends for so long or whatever it is. But, you know, they were just negative inputs into my life, you know. There are people who are dragging me down, especially while I'm trying to change and grow. I had so many people that were like, you know, like, what are you doing? You can't do that. You can't do this. And then even when I decided to go to Thailand, even my parents like received criticism. You know, like half the people thought it was really cool and they were like, yeah, that's awesome. The other half were like, what the hell? Are you crazy? Like, what are you doing? And like, especially with my parents, they're like, you know, you're going to let your daughter go? And they're like, well, she's an adult, you know, she can do what she wants. Like, this is her decision. But it's like,
and also hadn't like your dad been a part of that,
yeah.
He'd been over in Thailand before. So, like,
yeah.
he kind of knew what was up. It wasn't like, you know, your parents had never... It wasn't like you came up with it on your own. Like, I'm just going to Thailand. Bye, Mom and Dad. Like, they kind of were involved. But still.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally can see that, how parents would go crazy about it. Because...
Yeah.
Especially
and I mean,
parents in this area.
It's like, do something, yeah, for sure. And it's like, you know, do something beneficial with your life. You can do that anywhere that you are. But I mean, for me, I didn't just go to Thailand to like run around and have fun. And I mean, trust me, I had a lot of fun. I did lots of traveling, you know, just all around the country. And I had lots of time for play, but I was working, you know, I was actually learning how to speak Thai. So I was taking classes and then I was working Monday through Friday with 2 different organizations. And then, so like I had purpose in being there, but it was really cool because since I was a volunteer, I wasn't getting paid. So I got to make my own schedules. I could tell them like what days I wanted to show up, how long I wanted to be there. And then, you know, like, and then they would just like give me work to do based off of, you know, what little skill set I had. And it's like I had purpose in being there. But then I also got to have fun too, you know, and like when you first went over, like when you were an au pair, you know, it's like you had a job too, but you also had plenty of fun. You had lots of time to travel and do stuff, you know, like, you know, for somebody, like if you're going to take a gap year, don't just take a gap year for the hell of it and just, it's like do something beneficial, you know, because like if you're doing nothing, then, I mean, like you're only hurting yourself.
Yeah. One thing that like, okay, so me and my brother, we're just on this trip, and my brother's actually still over in Europe right now. He continued on.
Really?
Yeah, so he's in Krakow today, I think.
Where is that?
Poland.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm Polish. I don't know anything about Poland.
Yeah, I don't know anything about Poland either. Yeah, he went to Berlin, then he went to Prague, I think, and I think today he's in Krakow, and he actually went to Auschwitz today, or like earlier today,
Really?
I guess it was. Yeah, which is like really crazy because obviously that, you know, I can't really even imagine like being there. It would be so insane. But that's a different conversation. But anyways, he's going on this is like the first like solo trip he's done, which is really cool. Because like we went together and then I went home and he stayed. Don't remember where I was going with that. We were talking about people that want to take a gap year and want to travel and stuff. But yeah, I was going to say, basically also, so me and my brother were in Amsterdam, and we were talking about, like, how cool it would be to, like, move there. Because, like, Amsterdam is the bomb. It's, like, my favorite city in the world.
Yeah.
And people are going to be like, oh, yeah, it's because, like, drugs are legal, huh? And it's, like, not necessarily that. It's just, like, a freaking awesome city. The place is absolutely beautiful. Everyone like walks and rides a bike because there's canals, so like there's not very many cars. Like there's, you know, unfortunately there's really high taxes, which would kind of suck, but that also means that all the like public areas and stuff are just like really nice. The streets are super clean. Like, and anyways, it's just an awesome city. We're talking about like how cool it would be to live there, and Matthew was like, yeah, blah blah blah. What would we do for work and all this kind of stuff. And I was kind of just like explaining to him, like, basically you have to provide value to somebody in order to make a living. Whether that would be like right now through this podcast, hopefully some people are getting value from this because maybe they've never like traveled around the world and they're curious about it, or maybe they're interested in whatever we're talking about, or maybe we're just giving them entertainment and something to fill their brain while they're doing something boring, which is cool too. But in some sense, like, we're providing value. Hopefully, at one point, I can make money with this podcast because then I could hypothetically be wherever I want to be. That's like one of my main goals with the podcast is to use this as a platform where I can make enough money where I can live so that I can be a digital nomad and just live wherever I want, which is tight.
Yeah, that'd be really fun.
Yeah, exactly. But what I was explaining to my brother is like a lot of times when people go overseas, they're going to do like a service job or something because it's the easiest to get. But at the same time, there's also like paperwork and stuff you got to do. If you're kind of just making money on the internet, you can kind of just like float around anywhere and the government doesn't necessarily
because it doesn't affect them because you're not an outsider trying to take jobs away from their citizens. It's like you're still running on U.S. currency and getting paid through that. And
if you look at it from that point of view, I'm using my U.S. currency in your country, therefore I'm pouring into your communities and giving You're
enriching their economy.
Exactly. So, yeah. Like I said in the beginning, like the internet has kind of broken down a lot of these barriers where people have a window into other people's lives, whether it be like on Snapchat, like they'll have they used to do a thing where it was like the passport thing where they would show you like a little our story or whatever from a different country, and you could kind of see like people would be like, oh, hi, I'm in this country, blah, blah, blah. This is what we eat, or like, stuff like that. But I think actually watching those was kind of cool because like you got to see into a window of like someone else's world for a little bit. And 30 years ago, you only saw what you saw on TV or what you read in a book. Like you couldn't actually see what a real random person, because it took no effort for that person to make a Snapchat and post it. So it was like really pretty raw of what that person was actually experiencing. And the internet is like breaking down so many barriers. We could talk about that for hours and hours. But one thing that I was gonna also mention, like you said, living in Thailand, it's like super cheap. That's another thing that's a super misconception is people think traveling is so expensive that like they can't do it. And especially if you kind of just abandon everything back home and like transplant somewhere, like a lot of times people are like, well, I can't live there that long because I have rent. It's like, well, you've got to like move out of that.
You can sublet if you need to.
Yeah, you can sublet.
There's lots of options.
Yeah, or you can like sell your car or let someone else borrow it for that amount of time or whatever. There's lots of different ways. Like my friend the other day, he wants to become an au pair, and he was like asking me a bunch of questions and stuff. And he's like, how did you survive on only like 100 euros a week? And I'm like, well, the family was providing me with my food and stuff. So as long as I wasn't going out to eat, like as long as I ate with them, they were going to pay for my food. As long as I was, as long as I was with them, they were going to pay for like everything basically.
Yeah.
And they paid for my rent obviously because I was staying in their house.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know if you ever went out with the kids and did stuff, but they probably paid for that too. I was a nanny for a year, and whenever we went and did it, if I took them to a movie, their dad would give me money and he'd pay for mine too. Like that's kind of a common thing.
Exactly.
Considering you're probably their ride or you're at least their supervision. So I mean,
exactly.
It's like a lot of things are taken care of.
Yeah, that's what I was saying to him. I'm like, well, think about what you typically on a daily basis spend money on. Some of it might just be bullshit that like you don't need, like just random, like, oh, let's go get ice cream or something. Like, okay, cool, that's fun, but like that's $7 or whatever it might be, you know, and that's something you don't necessarily have to spend. One thing that I think also traveling helps you realize is how little material possessions you actually need.
Yeah. And so many people, they just buy things on a whim. They're like, oh, like this looks so cool. And it's like as soon as they get their paycheck, they're like, I have several $100s in the bank, so I can just go ahead and buy this. It's not going to affect it. But I mean, if you actually start to budget and you start to actually look at everything that you're spending your money on, like if you keep track of it, you'll realize there's so much stuff that you don't need. And, you really start to accumulate, like way too much junk.
Exactly.
And so like if you just start giving things up, I mean, you can save enough money to get yourself a plane ticket. And I mean, I know a lot of people aren't into having credit cards, but I mean, you can earn Sky Miles and things like that just by buying your normal things. It's like, that's actually how I got to Thailand, was just like based off of Sky Miles. So actually, I didn't pay a dime for my plane ticket.
There we go.
And that was the most expensive part, but I mean, for anybody who's actually paying for their ticket, but I didn't pay a dime.
Yeah. That's super. That's actually really good advice. Get a good credit card that gets you Sky Miles. I have one that gives me like cash back and stuff, and I can like redeem it for travel stuff. But I kind of want to get one that's a little bit better because I think I can get better return on certain ones. But I was gonna talk about too for a second, like letting go of stuff, because that's another thing that you were talking about before, like letting go of friends and letting go of toxic people, and trying to do things differently. One thing that I mentioned before is I'm trying to like clean my room right now and get rid of a bunch of old stuff. People tend to want to just like hang on to things just for the sake of hanging on. Like you said, like, oh, I've been friends with this person forever, I can't not be friends with them. But it's like, for me, I was cleaning my room and it's like, oh, I've had this thing forever, like, why can't I, like, I can keep it, there's space.
I might still need it.
I might still need it, or I might want to look at it like 4 years from now or whatever. Like, just random stupid shit that like I definitely don't need. And if my house burned down, I would never miss it or even remember that I had it, And so that's like a huge thing that when I was traveling, I had this thought a lot, like if everything back home like burned down, like I don't know if I mean I'd be upset obviously, but like it'd be okay. Like I wouldn't be that mad, like it'd almost be like a burden lifted off, like like all those old clothes and stuff, like now I won't feel wasteful, they're just gone. Like I can get new, I don't know. I had that thought like a lot, which might be kind of like weirdly unhealthy to have, but like I wish my house would burn down, but it wasn't necessarily like a wish, but it was more just like noticing like like I wouldn't really care,
One piece of advice that the staff up at the Master's Mission would constantly tell us was hang on to things loosely, like whatever it is, whether it be your car, your house, or, just like any of your possessions, it's just hang on to those things loosely, because like you never know when they can be gone. And I mean, it's just like being able to let go of things is just so important. I mean, whether that be actual, physical things or people or grudges or whatever it may be, like being willing to let go of those things, like you're dropping all that baggage that you don't need.
Totally.
That was a cool thing about being in Thailand too, is because I just lived out of my suitcase. I had my same clothes. Everybody that worked with me saw the same outfit every single week. And like they knew my clothes, they knew what I looked like, and like that's totally fine. They didn't judge me. But when I growing up here in Johns Creek, I always felt so judged if I wore the same outfit within a 3-week span. I was like, oh no, someone's gonna notice, or what if I already took a picture in this outfit. It's like I felt so judged. That's just the area that I kind of grew up in, and so I had this massive closet. But then it's like I realized, it's like I don't need those things. I don't need this much clothes. And that's kind of why I'm starting to go through too now. Is just for the past 3 years I've lived in a different place, and I keep going back to my parents' house as my in-between place, for a month or two at a time. And I still have all this junk that I accumulated from high school or middle school or whatever. And it's just like I'm trying to go through all of it, and it's crazy like how much the stuff I've accumulated and just how much money I have wasted. Like right now I have this giant bag in my room that's as tall as me. I'm like 5'4", and it's full of clothes. It's like a massive industrial bag or like trash bag, and it's full of clothes that I'm just getting rid of because it's like I don't need all these things. I haven't worn these things in forever, and it's just stuff that's weighing me down.
Exactly.
And then I'm looking at it and it's like I have $1,000 easily just in this bag just worth of clothes of things that I'm never gonna wear again.
Probably more, to be honest. Like
Probably.
it is pretty crazy. Like I think about that a lot. Another thing that I've thought a lot about, I've been watching these videos, not recently, but like a year ago or so, I discovered these videos of these people that were like minimalists, where they were just trying to like own as few possessions as possible. It's really fascinating looking at like what they wear and all this stuff. Like, oh yeah, I have 2 shirts, 2 pants, 2 shorts. Like they just have like a couple of things. And that's another thing that I've been trying to do is with the repeating outfit thing, because that's totally a thing. Like people, if you always wear like my friend Cameron, she called me out the other day on Snapchat. I was wearing this Sriracha shirt, and she's like, do you have another shirt? I'm like, damn it, like this is just my shirt, okay? Like I like it. And then I sent her a Snapchat of like 10 shirts. I'm like, look at all these shirts, Cameron, I have other shirts. But the whole repeating outfit thing is a real thing. People will call you out on it. one thing that can totally help with that is just wearing more basic plain stuff. People don't tend to notice, but if you wear a red sriracha shirt that has like, is very noticeable and you wear it all the time, you're going to be known as the sriracha guy. But if you're just wearing a gray t-shirt, no one's going to care. No one's going to notice. People are just going to, you're going to be wearing kind of like plain clothes, but you can like make them look cool.
Yeah.
And
that's kind of what I've been going through, is like looking through. It's like I have plenty of, just like plain black shirts or, tank tops or whatever it is. And it's like, I can make tons of outfits out of these, like I can keep however many pairs of shorts and pants that I want. But it's like, depending on how I want to wear this, I can dress it up, I can dress it down. It's like I can wear the same thing. And like, I can't even tell you how many times I've worn this outfit in the past year, because it's just, and like when I was even packing to move up to North Carolina, like that's what I did. I was like, okay, what are the things that I can, mix and match the most and, still make it flow well. Just like kind of get your color schemes, find like the colors that look good on you. So many people, like, or at least like for me, I'll be in a store and I see something that's really unique, like some really cool like wolf shirt or something with like, I don't know, like the Aurora Borealis or tie-dye or something like really out there and unique, and it's like, oh, that's so cool, like I want this or I need this, and then you get it and it's like, like you just can't wear it very much. You realize it doesn't really go with anything that you have, whereas just like keep it simple. And I mean, obviously it's going to depend based on your lifestyle, like if you need to dress up nice, then like obviously buy clothes based off of your like wardrobe. But I mean, if you have a work uniform, then you don't need that many clothes to for like your everyday.
Yeah, one thing I did in my closet that I did like earlier this year was I turned all the hangers backwards on all my clothes. So then, like, 1 year later, I can go back and see, like, I literally have not flipped the hanger, meaning I haven't worn it, or even pulled it out, to be honest, probably, and I'm going to get rid of it. And even some of the stuff, like, I was going through my closet recently, like, I'm never going to wear this again. But you want to hang on to it.
I've been thinking about doing that.
It's a good system. I kind of like it.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that this morning as I was hanging things up. I was like, I should probably do that because I've heard of it, but I just haven't really lived in the same house for very long. So I just keep moving around, at least for the past 3 years. So I haven't really gotten around to it, but maybe this is my year.
Yeah, and like I was putting stuff in like a donate pile. My mom's like, oh, this shirt is good. I'm like, when's the last time you saw me wear it? Never. In the past like 2 years. And there would be like one little thing. It's a cool shirt, but like the neck is weird or something, and so I never wear it.
Yeah.
And it's like, I just gotta like lose it. We've been talking about clothes for a while. I wanted to ask you about, okay, so we talked about Thailand, we talked about clothes and stuff like that. Let's talk about North Carolina, because like that's super, super interesting. So what exactly was the program again? Like you were learning sustainability and how to...
It's a missions organization, and so this was their training program. So everybody who's in the program is considered a candidate or like a potential candidate to be a part of their mission, and so they want to take the time to actually get to know you and train you before they're willing to send you out with their organization. And so I actually don't want to be a missionary with their organization, but I did want their training because the things that they offer are just extremely valuable in my opinion.
Nice.
And so
just out of curiosity, why don't you want to be a missionary with them?
I mean, I love the people and I really agree with their theologies and things like that, but just like with the way, for one, they try to send out families, and so I'm single, and like they prefer you to be like elder qualified, which would mean you have to have a wife or a husband, and then you also have to have children, and so like I'm not looking for that anytime soon. So it's like, well, for that, like, and then they will send like single men to certain areas. But just because women are a lot more vulnerable, and like that's a really touchy subject, especially here in America, as far as feminism and things like that. But the rest of the world isn't like that. The majority of the world treats women like trash. So to be a single woman going to some rural area, I'm putting myself in danger. And so I don't know. And then also they are a development organization, and so they're looking to send people who want to be there for the rest of their lives. I mean, there's furloughs and things where you can come home, but that's not really what I'm interested in. I'm actually more interested in relief and rehabilitation. Okay,
cool. So that's a little bit shorter term.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. Interesting. So in the program you mentioned you lived in this little cabin with like no electricity. How was like the first week, first day? Like, what was that all like?
I actually adjusted really well. Like, I thought it was going to be so hard and so different, but I mean, it really wasn't that bad. I mean, if anything, it was more so just inconvenient because I just had lanterns, and I bought a ton of little tiny candles for around my room, so I would light that up. That was just kind of calming, like it was really relaxing. But
yeah. So it was just you and Caleb?
Yep, it was just me and my brother. And so, and like we lived in that cabin together. They typically try to put 2 people per cabin, but there wasn't another single girl who was going through the program. And I convinced my brother to come along with this program with me because he had some like recent changes in life plans, and so and is interested in missions too. So it worked out really well. But I mean, honestly, the hardest part about being there was just the winter, like having to keep our fire stoked and things like that. It was just freezing.
Yeah.
Like there are so many days where it dropped below freezing. It got down to 0 for a week, and so that sucked. But, it's just like once your fire burns out, like, you have to keep restoking it every couple of hours. So that means, setting an alarm and getting up at 2 a.m. just to walk downstairs and start a new fire and hope that there's still embers there so you can easily restart your fire. Because if not, you're looking at, another 15-20 minute process, and by that time you wake up and it's cold, and so it's just sad, nobody wants to get out of bed.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's just like things like that was relatively difficult, but then not having cell service, I mean, it's like weird because there's a place where I could go drive down like our laundry room that had internet, and so I could go connect to internet there and do my laundry. I didn't have to wash it in my bathtub or anything, but just like it's like so I had like access to it, but it was just so calming not having my phone, just like not having that on me and not having to constantly feel like I had to reply to people. But I mean, it was also inconvenient in the sense that it's really hard to communicate with people up there. So yeah. Even my brother, like he'd be down at the shop and I'd be up, maybe making lunch or something. It's like I can't just call him. I have to go drive down the mountain and go find where he is, or and things like that. It's like things were just inconvenient, but a lot of things take a lot longer than they should. But
yeah, that's definitely true.
Learn patience.
Yeah, there's pros and cons to definitely having a phone on you at all times. Obviously, for the convenience factor, that's why like parents want their kids to have their phone. But at the same time, you're so right about the calming thing. Like even right now, like we don't have our phones. Like they're sitting face down. It's really nice actually sometimes because if we weren't recording this, there might be a point where like my phone buzzes, I'm gonna look at it, and then there's like a weird pause in the conversation, and then the other person like.
They feel obligated to look at their phone, and then like all of a sudden
and then you're like showing each other memes or something. That's what I love about this podcast thing is it gives me an opportunity to have like really cool conversations. And that was another reason why I wanted you to be on the podcast too, is because like we've always connected really well and had like really awesome conversations, without phones. Because that's like a big part of it is like our phones are such big distractions, and when you can like just leave your phone for a while, it's nice.
Yeah. And then it's also really funny because I would have my friends come up and visit me, and they would, like they'd have their phone on them because, just everybody does, especially if you have a smartphone, that's your camera, your iPod, all of that. But then it's like we would be talking and I would just notice them looking at their phone, and it's like we're like just sitting on my couch, and then, they like light up their phone, and, the amount of times that they were like, oh, why am I looking at my phone? I don't have service. You're like, it's not going to do me any good here. It's like, it's just like really funny because like they never realized how often they were just looking at their phone for whatever reason, just to see if a notification came through or whatever it was. And that was just really entertaining to me because, it's like I'm used to it. I would leave my phone in my cabin when I would go around places, or, usually, or actually might even leave it in my car just for the iPod purpose. But,
yeah.
I mean, it's just really funny because like you don't even realize how much that you look at it and try to turn it on just for hopes of entertainment or whatever.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting. I was watching this documentary about how mobile developers that make apps and phones and stuff actually put in lots of effort into the psychology of why people are using their phones and stuff, and they actually try to make you more addicted to it. And in the same way that people love in Vegas to play the slot machine. Like, it's not fun necessarily, but there's that little bit of dopamine that's released when like something happens.
Yeah.
And every time you pull it, there's like that hope. And it's creepy because when you're scrolling on Instagram or scrolling on Facebook, they actually set the algorithm to be like that. Like, they'll actually try to sometimes put like a more boring post that's not getting much attention sandwiched in between like two more important posts or ones that are getting more attention ones, because they know like the rate at which they can interlace those. If everything at the top was the most exciting and then at the bottom it was the most boring, people would stop scrolling after a while. Yeah. But because they can alternate it, it's like, oh, that sucks. Oh, this is really cool. Oh, that sucks. Oh, this is really cool. It's like a slot machine because you never know what you're going to get. It's actually kind of creepy.
That's creepy, but I mean, kind of smart on their part.
Totally, because they can sell more ads and they can keep you on their app longer.
Mm-hmm. It kind of turns like the population into a zombie, though.
It's creepy, and actually, like I said, you can get addicted to that dopamine drip because it's literally like when you pull out your phone, if there is a notification, you get a tiny release of dopamine because like, oh cool, someone cares about me, or like, oh cool, something happened, yay! Or even if it's just like a work email or something, you're just like trying to stay connected to this weird world that humans have never had to be connected to before, and it's just kind of strange. And people don't think about this, but we are in the infancy of the internet. Like, it's kind of absurd.
It's still a new thing.
It's still a new thing, and I think almost subconsciously, we almost kind of think, I don't know, for me, like growing up, I always have known about the internet and stuff, and I don't really remember a time before the internet, but I do remember when the internet was in its infancy. Like, truly in its infancy.
Dial-up.
Yeah, I do remember.
You couldn't use the phone and the internet at the same time.
Yeah, I remember dial-up. I remember websites looking terrible. Like, if you look at a super old website, or you're on Google and, like, you're searching for something obscure, and you happen upon, like, a super old website that hasn't been updated since, like, the 90s, you're like, what in the heck is this? Like, this looks like trash.
Yeah.
Like, how did we even navigate something? Or, you know, like, every time you wanted to, like, watch a video, you had to download some plugin, or, like, play a game, you had to download some other weird thing to make it work. And so now it's, like, so intuitive, but we have no idea, like, what we're even birthing.
Yeah.
It's kind of creepy, actually.
It's like, it's such a double-edged sword because, you know, there's so many cool things like we were talking about earlier, how it, you know, can like, connect you with the rest of the world and, you know, give you that window. But then at the same time, you know, like so many people are just getting sucked into it, and, you know, there's a whole dark side to it too. Mm-hmm. I guess you just have to find a balance somewhere in between it. Exactly.
There's a lot of new things that, like, I know on the new iPhone, there's like certain things where it can tell if you're driving, and when you're driving, it'll send you a notification saying, hey, looks like you're driving. Do you want to turn notifications off? And you can. So, like, when you're driving, you just put it away and you won't get notified. And then when your phone stops moving or whatever, it can tell you're not driving anymore. It'll say, hey, do you want to turn it back on? You can say yes or whatever.
Interesting.
Really cool, actually. It's convenient that it gives you the option to say yes, because also if you're a passenger, that would be super annoying if it just turned them off when you realized you were driving. Yeah. But there's a lot of, I think, demand for people that are like, I don't want to see notifications. Help me see less, because there's just too much now.
Yeah.
Like, for me, I've turned off all notifications on my phone for Facebook because there's just one every 2 seconds. Like, It's absurd. I've turned off the notifications for, like, Instagram. I've turned off the notifications for mostly everything. So, because I know that I'm going to open the app every hour anyways, or whatever it is. Like, I'm going to eventually open it because I'm curious. But some days it's nice because I kind of forget, and then I'm like, oh, cool, like, I have 20 notifications. Before, I would have been, like, looking at it every one, but it's kind of nice to have, like, a whole bunch, because then you can, like, go through and, like, see what actually matters and what was just bullshit anyways.
Yeah, you spend a lot less time that way.
Exactly. Okay, so to kind of go back to the whole, like, no electricity thing, so, like, you're living in this cabin, and you were learning, you talked about, like, learning welding and building bridges and all this stuff, like, or whatever it was. Like, what did you... Building bridges? Did you learn how to build a bridge, or did I make that up? Building dams. My bad.
We did airstrips, too, which are... it's similar to a road. It's just really long and flat. Yeah. But it's actually easier than a road.
Yeah. So, like, tell me about that. Like, that's really interesting.
Just about, like, the different things
that we learned? Yeah, like, what'd you learn? And, like, how did you learn it? And
Well, so, I mean, obviously, well, it's an 11-month program. So, I mean, in 11 months, you can't really become, a master of anything, but they can at least expose you enough to something where, like, if you were to go in, then you at least can know, like, where people are going to make a critical mistake. I mean, if, this being for, rural areas, I mean, not America, but, like, and then also just we had all the resources too. I have tons of textbooks, and then also all my instructors all have done this firsthand and have spent years and years and years in different places of the world, and so they've all have experience with it. And so it's like now I know I have resources to call and, like, books that I can read and things that I can look up on if like I might not be like the only person ever building a road, but it's like sometimes like you need an alternate way to get somewhere. And so yeah, there was that, like the diesel mechanics, honestly, all of that like went way over my head because I don't understand cars, but I do know how to change a flat tire and change my oil now.
There we go.
So that is something. And like, those are two very important things.
I understand the concept of changing my oil, but I've never tried to do it. I feel like I could but like YouTube is so helpful. Like,
yeah.
Because like you can kind of learn anything on YouTube now.
Yeah. It's helpful. I mean, like, I still take it to a place to
yeah,
go do it,
yeah.
But I do know how
yourself, but
to
if you
do
had
it.
To, you could.
Because I just usually end up burning myself with the oil, so...
yeah.
And dropping the cap in the oil pan.
Yeah, that would be sucky.
But it's like I have the ability to do it, and so it's like things like that where it's nice. So like there's a lot of things where like I honestly felt like I was drowning because like they're just dumping information on me. They're like, oh yeah, don't do this and always remember this, and I'm like, okay. Sure.
Don't forget to drop the oil cap in the what? Yeah, you're like getting stuff mixed up.
And then like some things they just did like a brief overview of like things that I guess like for welding we did that for 1 week, and that was actually really cool because we got to build our own trusses, and so and then we put like 2,000 pounds of pressure on them, and like we would do it in I guess teams of 2 or like by the 2 trusses, and then see whose would break first. It was actually really dangerous the way that we did it, but it was really fun.
Wait, so for people that are listening that don't know what you're talking about, so what were you putting on it? Like, what exactly is it? It
was some kind of, I don't even know like what it was, but it was like something that like basically like you could some like machine or that like they put, and it just crunk up the pressure on it, and like it had over 2,000 pounds of pressure. Okay. And so it's just like sitting there, and they just keep turning it up and up until the metal breaks.
Oh wow.
And so like you can just kind of see, like it was really funny because like as you're turning it up, like you start to see the trusses start to bend, and like whose is doing worse because that means that their welds were worse. And so with like funny. A good truss, then like you're good.
Huh. That's kind of cool.
Do you know what a truss is?
Yeah.
It's like the things that you see on the side of stages.
Yeah. That's really cool, actually. I used to do like the lighting and stuff at church, like for a little while. Oh, cool. So I kind of remember some things about it.
So that was really fun because me and my brother both won, and then we didn't compare ours against each other because that would be really bad for our relationship. So we're just like, we're the winners,
because also Caleb already knew how to weld, right?
Yeah, he's gone to school for it, and I've learned it at my work too, but I learned how to do MIG at work, and then this was stick, so it was a completely different kind for me. But
wait, what are the differences?
There's MIG, stick, and TIG, and so like it's just like it's all different kinds of metal and like how it feeds through the welder. So MIG is like a really tiny wire, and like it's just kind of like constantly feeding through, whereas stick is just just one little stick of the metal, and then you put it, I don't know all the technicalities of it, but like you like put it in the welder, and then it just shortens down, and then when you run out, then you have to put a new one in.
Kind of like a hot glue gun?
Yeah, kind of like a hot glue gun.
Huh.
And then I've never done TIG, but...
What is it? It's even...
I don't know what that one is.
Huh.
But...
Neither do I. Someone will figure it out.
Yeah.
If they're really curious.
Know.
No, that's cool though.
And yeah, so we've done stuff with like animal husbandry, so like learning how to like take care of animals. I mean, mostly like things like goats and chickens and horses and things like that, but like learning how to vaccinate them, that was pretty cool.
Huh.
And then also how to kill them because like you're gonna need to eat somehow, and so got to learn how to slaughter goats and chickens.
Lauren, how could you kill them?
Because I mean you gotta eat.
Exactly.
But we also did farming. So, we made this huge farm, and we all got a certain amount of plots, and then got to learn like the joys of weeding and things like that. And working out in the sun.
Yeah, I feel like also the biggest reason why our lives are so easy here in America is not necessarily even because we have money. Because the money goes a long way, yes, but it's mainly the infrastructure, I feel like, that allows us to have such a good life, Because we have roads, we have the internet, we have power, we have water, we have grocery stores where we can just go and get food.
Yeah.
And that's one thing about life, is that it's grimy and it's rough and it's not easy and it's not romantic how we can just, oh, well, let's just not kill the animals, they're all our friends. It's like, bro, we gotta like eat. Like we've gotta, probably in America we probably eat too much meat.
Yeah.
We eat a lot, but
I mean, obviously there's lots of people who are out there that, like they're just being sensitive towards the animals themselves, and it's like, we shouldn't kill them. But a lot of it is just the mass consumption that we eat. So it's like there's such a huge demand on it that, there's been like so many studies where it's actually like degrading the environment and things like that. And so it's like just like the demand that America has alone on meat is bad. And so like there's lots of reasons, but I guess we don't really like need to get into all of that. But
none of us are nutrition
but food is
experts.
Just, I mean, food's important, and like you're gonna need it, like you're gonna have to survive somehow. But that was another thing, was our closest grocery store was 40 minutes away.
Wow.
So it's like you really have to start, meal prepping and planning for what you want, make yourself a list, because I mean, it's not exactly convenient to drive 40 minutes away just to get to an Ingles,
Yeah.
The closest Walmart was an hour and a half, for like the things that you can't get at Ingles.
How did you keep your stuff cold if it didn't have electricity?
We have had a stove and a fridge that ran off of propane.
Oh, nice.
So,
that's
and then also
cool.
Heated our water too, so we did have warm showers.
How often would you? Oh, nice. That's convenient. How much I'm assuming it was a pretty big propane tank.
Yeah.
But like, how often would you have to like change it or add gas or whatever?
We never did.
Oh, really?
It was big enough, and
wow.
So basically, what they do is you
all
start
11 months.
You start off But I mean, when you're not running lights and other things, I mean, like there's really not that much.
And propane lasts a lot longer than people think. Like it's a really slow burning gas.
Yeah, and they like shove a ton in there. Like it's all pressurized and whatnot. But what they do is you just start off with a tank that's full, and then at the end of the year they fill it back up and they tell you how much you used, and then you pay them back. So I actually haven't gotten that bill yet, so I don't know how much we used.
Huh? I was actually curious to ask how much it costs, because that's actually very interesting.
Not much, because I have other friends that have gone through the program. They just left earlier, and then they said that it was cheap. Like they're looking to get it in their house now, because I think it was only like maybe a couple hundred. Like they didn't tell me the exact number, but they were like, it is way cheaper. So like their stove and everything, like they're getting it like with propane because it's just easier that way.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think there's a huge movement now, like, of people that want to, like, go back to more, living off the land and learning how to be more of a human that has to actually try to survive rather than just living in this weird society, strange, fake life that we all live here in America, where, like, we can just go to the store and, like, oh, I'm eating chicken, but like you're not actually thinking about the fact that like, yo, this was like a living bird.
Yeah.
And like had a life, and like now I'm eating him. You're just thinking like, oh, I'm eating chicken.
Yeah.
And it's in this fried thing on this sandwich that I got from Chick-fil-A or whatever,
Yeah, it's like things like it's like a lot of things in America are just so much more convenient, but then it just speeds up the pace of everything. It's like so many people like I don't know, it's like I guess they just don't know how to slow down. It's like they constantly have to be like on to the next thing. I have so many friends that are like that, and it's like where they just want to constantly, it's just like, okay, now we have to be here and there, they're like keeping to their whole schedule and just super OCD about it. But up on the mountain, like we have this, like we just called everything mountain time. So I mean, we had our classes in the morning that started at 9 and 11. And those started on time every single time. Everything else is mountain time. So it's like people show up, 30 minutes late or whatever. Like if we say, oh, we're going to go play games, at 7 o'clock, it's like, don't show up at 7 o'clock. Please do not show up at 7 o'clock because no one will be there. It's like everybody is just on this like slower pace. And, and when I was in Thailand, people said it was Thai time, and like usually in like other cultures, there's, it's like people aren't as, up to pace as Americans, and like because Americans can just be really anal about those things. But it's just like,
I think it also has something to do with the population density too. Like when you're so far away from your neighbors and everything, you kind of just slow down and you're like, I'm not in a rush, like I'm just here by myself, like I can take my time, like there's no reason to rush, like why? And they've actually done a study where just by recording people's conversations and seeing how fast they talk, you could, to a very, very close percentage, determine how dense the area of population they lived in. So if you lived in LA or whatever, you're going to talk super fast. If you live in New York, you're talking super fast. And if you live in like a rural area, you're going to talk more slow and slow it down. Because, it is, it's really interesting. Because even like we're all in a hurry. What are we doing next? Oh, I'm doing this. I'm just so busy. I can't even make time to do this podcast or whatever, And you're right. People just want to like cram their schedule so full and I think it gives them a sense of purpose, and also they don't ever want to slow down or be alone, because then it also makes them have to think about their life and where they're going and what they're doing with it.
Yeah. And
like think about their greater purpose and all those kind of deep thoughts that people don't want to think about.
Yeah. Things that people try to distract.
Exactly. There's have you ever heard of sensory deprivation tanks before?
Yeah, I have.
Have you done one before? It's really fascinating. I've done it twice now. There's a place in Little 5 Points that has one. And I was in the lobby it was before I did my second float, and this girl was in the lobby, and she was there just to get a massage, because this place does like massages and like infrared sauna therapy and stuff like that too. But before I went in the tank, we were talking about it, and she's like, oh my gosh, I'm so scared. Like, I would never do it. And I was like, no, it's like really cool. It's really relaxing. It's kind of meditative. Like, you can, it's good for a lot of things. And she was, and the lady at the desk was like talking to her about it too. And this lady was like, I'm just scared. I don't know. I'm just like afraid. And I was like, what are you afraid of? And she was like, I don't know. It'd just be like kind of tight. I was like, to be honest, like, unless you're scared of your own thoughts, like, it wouldn't be that scary.
Yeah.
And she just kind of like, wow, she's like, I'm terrified of my own thoughts. Guess I'm never doing it. And I was kind of like, that was weird. Like, why are you scared of your own thoughts?
Yeah.
Like, that just did not resonate with me.
Really strange.
And then the lady,
you have to be in tune with yourself. You're like, I don't know. That's crazy to me.
Yeah, it was very weird. She was like, and then the lady at the reception desk was kind of weird too, because she was talking about how like there's 3 tanks there. 2 of them are custom built tanks that are less I don't know, intense. They're a little bit bigger. They're not as claustrophobic. And then they have one that's like an industrial one that's like made by this like, I don't know, company, and it's more like a coffin, but it's way more soundproof, because in the other ones you can still kind of hear stuff a little bit, because it's so quiet that you can still hear things going on like upstairs. Like, it's in this basement, there's like people walking upstairs, so sometimes you can kind of hear people, or like you can even faintly hear like people talking up front or whatever, like really quietly, but just enough that it kind of takes you out of it. Yeah. And so I think the next time I want to do like the more industrial one, but the lady at the front desk is like, no, I don't want to do that one. I'm scared of it or whatever. I'm like, I don't know. You work here. You shouldn't be talking about it like that. Right. It was so weird.
Way to endorse.
But yeah, the lady at the front desk is kind of like, yeah, aren't we all scared of our own thoughts? And I'm kind of like, I don't know if scared is the right word. Like, there's some thoughts that I have where I'm kind of like, that was weird. Like, that was kind of a messed up thing to think. But at the same time, like, thoughts are a healthy thing. Yeah. You should never be, like, scared of them.
They help you sort yourself out, you know, and especially if you're someone who feels like you're in a rut, or, you know, and if you're trying to look to change things in your life, you know, it's like being able to reflect on yourself is how you're going to be able to change those habits and start to learn what to let go. Like, you have to reflect back on those things and be able to, like, look inwards at yourself. I mean, that's kind of a lot of what like yoga and stuff is too. Like there's, I mean, some of it's more just exercise, but then there's also ones that are a lot more spiritual too.
Totally. Yeah. That is, I think, a big trend as well nowadays is like mindfulness. Like people are trying to slow down and like live more in the moment and all this kind of stuff. Because I think we're realizing as a society that technology is kind of like taking a lot of that human aspect away from us, and people are getting depressed and being unhappy with their lives and stuff, and you've got to like learn to slow down and be introspective and all this kind of stuff. I'm sure that being up in North Carolina, like that was like a huge, it was super easy almost to be introspective because you don't have a lot of those same distractions.
It's a lot easier than I thought it was. I was really surprised by the amount of people that just in talking about it, because like, I mean, I left the mountain fairly often on the weekends and when I didn't have things to do, just because I was close enough to home where I could, you know, still go do things or go on trips or travel. And so many people, just like in talking to them, they were saying, like, I could never do that. Like, that sounds awful. I mean, maybe for like a weekend, but like, it was like for a year. It's like, it's not that bad. I mean, it's like I had community up there. It's not like I was by myself. It's not like I lived in a sensory deprivation tank, you know? It's like I could, but, you know, having to be able to, like the opportunity to actually, you know, just like sit in my room and just like know that nothing's coming through on my phone or like nothing, and just like be able to have that me time or, you know, go for a walk or whatever. It's just like, it was awesome. I mean, I'm also like an introvert, so I mean, I guess that kind of helps too. I mean, I love being around people. I'm more so like the introvert or like the extroverted introvert. Like I love being around people, but I also love my me time. So I mean, it was just really nice for me.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. And then like while I was up there, it's like everything's, you know, pretty slow paced and, you know, almost relaxed. I mean, obviously there's times where we had a ton of work and things to do, but you know, it's like, but then on the weekends I could go leave, you know, like I traveled to tons of states like I had never been to before in this past year, and so I was able to go visit friends and you know, go hiking and climbing in random places that I had never been before. And so it's like I got to choose when I wanted to have that time, you know. It's like if I wanted to go hang out with people, and you know, there's other people who live on the mountain. It's like if I wanted to go have social time, you know, they're always welcoming, so I could just show up at someone's house and be like, hey, what's up?
Yeah.
But
that's awesome.
I don't know.
Like you brought up an interesting point about like the introverted extrovert kind of thing. Like I definitely can relate to that because on one hand, I definitely love my me time, like being alone and just doing stuff on my own. Even traveling sometimes on my own. Like sometimes when I'm traveling with other people, I'm like, ugh, I just want to like go do my own thing.
Yeah.
And ditch these people. Sometimes I do that. But other times, like I do like to be around people, and like when you're alone for too long, it can get lonely. Like loneliness is a real thing. Like you've got to be around other people because we crave community as humans. I think a lot of times there's people that say like, oh, I hate being alone and stuff like that. Like I'm such an extrovert or whatever. It's not even necessarily that they're an extrovert necessarily, because they might not even be that, you know, outgoing or whatever. But I think a lot of times it's the fact that they don't like being alone with their own thoughts because they don't like what they have to listen to, or they don't like what's inside or whatever.
Yeah, especially if they don't like who they are. I mean, changing yourself isn't an easy thing to do, and like looking inward and like reflecting on yourself, like, you know, everybody likes to think of themselves as the good guy because it's like, you know, your own intentions and you know your things, but you know, everybody has those skeletons in the closet. Nobody is perfect, you know. The world is full of sin and evil, and you know,
not me, but
I'm sure. But it's like nobody wants to do that, and that's really hard. But I mean, it's so beneficial. It's so helpful. It's like that's how you're gonna start to realize the things that like can be like most important and most influential in your life. You know, you can start to take out all the like that baggage. And then it was really interesting when I like just being up there was, you know, sometimes like I would just find myself in, you know, just like a bad mood and just like, I'm really sad, I'm up here, all my friends are having a good time somewhere else, and like it's like I'm by myself and blah blah blah, you know, poor me. But and then, like I got to like sit there and just be like, well, like why am I feeling like this? And you're just like sitting there. It's like when you have the time and you don't have the distractions, like you can just be like, you know, actually start to find where those things seated or like where those insecurities and things come from. And that's been beneficial for me because there's so many insecurities and things that I have, and it's like, where did that even come from? And just being able to, you know, kind of reflect back on my childhood and see where all these things like have come from, and just like look, like reflecting on my life, it's like, oh, like interesting. It's like really cool just to like, I don't know, just like be able to like look inward at yourself and get to know yourself better. I mean, it's only going to benefit you.
Yeah. And it's cool because like, even though you're, like you said, not that far away from home, you were up in the mountains and stuff, so it's, you were separating yourself out. I think that's such a huge factor in discovering who you really are and what you really like and what you really want and stuff. Because there's a lot of people that don't like themselves, and I always say, like, be yourself, but be your best self.
Yeah.
Like you said, you can change. I was talking a couple podcasts ago, was with my friend Danielle, and she's a clinical health counselor. She has her master's degree in clinical health psychology or something like that. Mm-hmm. And it was really interesting because she was saying how your brain chemistry like actually can change. Your brain is not the same like after you recover from addiction, or you know, or in recovery or whatever, different things. And so like you can change yourself, but you know, people always say, oh, stay true to who you are. Yeah, stay true to who you are and like do the things you actually want to do, but figure those out first. Mm-hmm. Like, don't be this crappy version of yourself. Like, be yourself, but be your best self. I always say, like, try to do the things that would attract the type of person that you would want to be attracted to. Like, for example, you know, if you're, so many people, when they're looking for, you know, girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever, they're out there looking for someone who has low enough standards to take you. You know what I mean? They're kind of like,
that's sad.
You know, but that's like
not
kind
what I thought you were gonna say. That's so much sadder. Sorry.
No, but like it's true though how people are like they are looking at themselves in a negative light. And they're like, ugh, I'm so ugly. I need to find a guy that like has low enough standards to take me. Or like, oh my gosh, I'm such a slob, or I'm fat. Like I need to find a girl that doesn't care about looks and just likes me for myself or whatever. But then there's other things where it's like, well, you can do things about that to change, you know? Like you can do things to change who you are, and you change your appearance and change how you are and stuff. And like, I like to think of it, I've said this a bunch of times on the podcast, but I'm constantly trying to like reverse engineer who I want to be. So like, if I was looking at the ultimate version of myself, what is that person doing today? Like what are the steps to like get to that place? Like if I want to be a digital nomad and like live all around the world, how am I going to get there? I've got to figure out a way to make money on the internet. And one thing I know about myself through introspection is like, I'm not always great at like, you know, bullshitting and selling stuff that I don't believe in. I've got to actually believe in it. And another thing is I love creating content. So like this podcast is like a great way to do that because I can totally see myself doing it long term or whatever. And so yeah, that's just me ranting on all that. But
yeah, I mean, there's so many ways to do the things that you love and to like, you know, achieve those goals. But it's like you got to get creative, you know. There's not really a cookie cutter answer for anybody. Yeah.
I hate when people say they're not creative. They're always like, oh, I'm not very creative. And I'm like, you're totally creative. Like, you thought of this or whatever, you know. And I think people, especially went through school, were taught to be this cookie cutter version of whoever they want us to be, whoever they is. But you know what I mean? Like, you lose that creative side of you. When you're a kid, you probably drew and colored and stuff, and when you're an adult, you're like having to make spreadsheets and boring stuff or whatever, you know. And it's like I try to stay in touch with that as much as possible because I think it's good. But I was listening to a podcast recently where they were talking about how, you know, a giant percentage of jobs are going to be automated in the future, and like what are we going to do about this? And people have constantly been worried about this, about computers replacing us and stuff like that,
robots.
And there, lo and behold, the unemployment level hasn't changed much over the past 20-30 years. It's stayed about the same. There's always a way that we'll find something to do, but the thing that will remain constant is things that require thought, things that require challenge, things that require overcoming problems and obstacles, not just doing the same thing every day over and over, because that could be easily automated and copied and you can be replaced easily. It's like you've got to figure out something that only you can do, specialize down. And then also, like the things that you were doing in North Carolina, some of those jobs are totally available, and those jobs are needing people to, they're needing more people in those jobs, but it's just the fact that it's not a sexy thing to do or want to do, that people are opting to do something else.
I'm a firm believer in having a skill set as opposed to just some degree. I mean, you can go get a communications degree and like that's really awesome, you know, like, but you know, there's really a really broad field, you know, like you don't really have any skills, I mean, unless you've acquired them some other way, you know. If you're a welder, you know, if you're a mechanic, if you have these hard skills, you know, things that you can really do and things that you can offer to the table, it's like those are things that, I mean, yes, I mean, you can get a robot to weld something, like that's cool, but you know, when it comes to maintenance on machines and stuff, you're not gonna necessarily like get a robot to go in and get under the parts and start taking the machine apart to like refix things or for maintenance and all that. It's like there's some things that that really can't be automated, you know. Like my brother, he used to work at an industrial bakery. He was a maintenance technician, and you know, whereas the people who ran the lines, you know, there used to be tons of people who were out there, you know, like checking the bread and things to see, you know, like take it off or, you know, put things on and like, you know, but like, and like a lot of their jobs got replaced by computers because they didn't need it. But because they got, you know, bigger, better ovens and things like that, you know, that replaced those jobs, they had to hire more maintenance people because they need people to take care of those things.
Exactly.
And so finding those skills, you know, whatever it may be, it's just like making yourself more diverse is
exactly,
like diversity is what people really want and what they're after. They're not after a cookie cutter degree.
Yeah, and like this is a huge trend, but also companies nowadays aren't even necessarily hiring on these hardcore, like, okay, do you have this degree? There's lots of places that will hire you on soft skills. Like, are you teachable? Are you friendly? Do you get along with the rest of our staff? Because I don't care what kind of degree you have. If you're a shitty person, we don't want you around. You know? And so I think more now than ever, like you said in the beginning, just being a good person, it has a huge return on your investment. Like nowadays, you need genuine people, trustworthy people, you know, people that are going to get along with everybody, because no one wants to be stuck in a job with crappy people. Like everyone wants people to be friendly and nice and cool. But is there anything else you want to talk about?
I don't know, I'm just kind of talking.
Exactly. No, I was going to say, I feel like we've kind of covered a lot of stuff. If there was people that are like interested in like doing what you did as far as learning, like, you know, even like going to the program you did or doing something similar, like what kind of advice would you give those people, or how can they find more information, or like whatever?
Well, I mean, the Master's Mission, I would say, it's a very unique program, and it's not for everybody. So I wouldn't recommend it to certain types of people, but for other people I would. And so, I mean, I guess it really just depends on what you're looking for. But I mean, the internet is a big place. You can find a lot of information on whatever you're looking for. And I don't know, it's like if you are interested in something, you know, whether it be missions or maintenance or whatever it is, start to find people who are actually into that, you know, like find a friend, or like if you meet someone who's interested or like, you know, is already in that career path, you know, befriend them, ask them what they did, and just start getting advice from other people. Word of mouth goes a really long way. That
is very true. So also I was going to ask you, now that you finished with this program, now that you're done, you talked about how you wanted to go into relief and rehabilitation, right? That was it. So what would that look like for you? Like
So for one of the organizations that I worked with when I was in Thailand, it's called Free Burma Rangers. And so, but they like originally started going off into Burma and helping the Burmese ethnic people who've been run out of their villages. and they would provide jungle trainings and like just like relief and like medical trainings and things like that. And they partner with other organizations, but now they've expanded to Iraq and Sudan and like other, like maybe even Syria, like in the near future, who knows. But I would love to actually go work with them and go do some of the missions with them, because they basically just go into conflict areas and they let the people know that, you know, they're not forgotten and that they're coming to bring help, hope, and love. That's their mission. And so in like whatever way that is. And so so I'd like to go work with them. So I'm looking at going into the medical field. So I'm about to go to school for physical therapy. And so a lot of the people that they've been working with have, you know, severe, you know, gunshot wounds or shrapnel, or, you know, like I've had arms, limbs blown off and things like that. And so whereas a lot of, you know, they have medics who will go in and do, you know, the initial, you know, take out, but like I would love to work with the people who, you know, like in their rehabilitation stage where they're just trying to get back on their feet and back into some kind of normal way of life.
That's really awesome.
That's what I'm looking at.
That's really cool. How do you make sure that that's sustainable? You know, like we talked about that a lot in the beginning. How can you make sure that the efforts that you're making there continue? Like what things do you put in place?
I mean, well, as far as
like medical stuff, because like if you were doing medical stuff over there and helping people, like how can you like make sure that that can be sustainable or whatever?
Well, I mean, just depending on the area, because I mean, this is like relief war type zones. So I mean, for like initially, you know, like you have to remove the people and then get them into a safe area, but I mean, as far as like medically, I mean, to make it sustainable, I'm not sure as far as like, because like sustainability and relief work they don't necessarily go hand in hand. They're kind of branches, or like different branches of a tree. So, I mean.
Gotcha. That makes sense actually, because, yeah. Another thing that you mentioned, like Syria and Iraq and stuff, and it's all these people that are in like war zones essentially, and they didn't ask to be in these conditions, and all they want to do is just have their normal life back, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of talk about like refugees and people, you know, should we let all the Syrian refugees into America and all this stuff like that, and all these questions and stuff. And one thing that I've heard that is a big misconception is like a lot of people think that these refugees want to come to America and like relocate here and like live here permanently. And typically that's like not the case. Like typically they want to come to America because it's safe and all that, but eventually they would want to move back to where they came from. They want to have their like normal life back. Is that like
I mean, obviously, like everybody's going to have their own individual motives. And so, I mean, if they need a temporary relocation to somewhere, then yeah, like bring them on. That's awesome. If you're only going to give them a temporary visa, you know, like once the war is over, once their area has been cleared and they can go back, then bring them back over. I mean, everybody's like individual motives for coming here is going to be different. But I mean, I think what's really going to help those refugees is, you know, like once you're there, is like, you know, helping like be there and like help them rebuild their homes and help them get back to a regular, you know, community, and, you know, help bring the economy back up and just start building back those different businesses and things that they can do, you know, start growing more trees and plants, you know, start getting something or anything going as much as you can. And like that's where the sustainable development kind of comes into that. So it's like those are, I guess, like the two different fields as far as, you know.
That makes sense.
Like they're going to need medical relief if they've been injured, but then that's not the long-term goal. The long-term goal is for them to get back to a normal way of life, and then hopefully a better and a healthier way of life.
Yeah. That's another thing that's really hard, is like when you're starting from zero, you're starting from nothing. The hardest thing is getting from 0 to 1. Like the hardest thing is going from nothing to something. And that's why I feel like missions and, you know, donations and whatever, that's where I feel like it plays the most critical role, is helping people get back on their feet kind of thing, rather than just like going in and giving a bunch of money or going to visit them to help them for like a week or whatever. It's like helping them kickstart that beginning and then let them take it on from there.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be sustainable if you don't give them the tools to equip them to be able to actually be like productive in whatever they're doing. Like you can't just go and like hand things out. I mean, a lot of people will go to places in Africa and dig wells. It becomes a big community well, and it's like, wow, like, yeah, like that's awesome, water. I mean, like what can be wrong with that? But I mean, if it's a community well, who's going to take care of it? I mean, it's like when something belongs to a community, it really belongs to nobody. Nobody like is gonna, like, you have to start training people how to take care of those things. And while you're at it, you might as well train people how to dig their own wells so they can start having their own individual ones. Because if they have their own individual well in their backyard, they're gonna take care of it, and they're gonna know the ins and outs of it. They're gonna care about it. That's their source of water. And then it's not necessarily a very fast process, especially in places like Africa. It's like those things, like it's all things that need to be developed and learned. And then like from that, like once you have a well, then you can start getting water systems, and you can start putting like laying pipes, and where they might actually be able to have running water in their house, like things that are just normal to us. But a lot of people, they have to walk miles just to get water, and then they can only bring back what they can carry on their head.
Yeah.
Or in their arms.
Yeah, and most of the time it's not clean anyways.
Yeah, and they have to go back and do all these things, and yeah. And when water belongs to a community, like all it takes is for someone to come by and like drop something dead in the water, and all the water's ruined,
Yeah.
Like, you can hit a squirrel and drop it in the water, and that can kill people.
Yeah. It's very true.
But I mean, if you equip people to be able to do these things themselves, then it helps. It becomes sustainable.
Exactly. Giving people an opportunity to provide value is like super important. And like I said with my brother, it's like you've got to figure out a way that you can provide value to other people. Otherwise, you have no hope because that's the only way a society works. Like, yeah, you can go live off in the forest and try to do everything on your own, but you're going to have a pretty poor quality of life. If you want to live in a society and you want to have all of the benefits of living in a society and a community, you've got to provide value for others. And that's what it takes. Yeah. That's what you got to do. Cool. Well, is there any last, I feel like that's a good place to kind of wrap it up. Is there any other last things you want to mention? Or if people want to like follow you on social media, or if they want to ask you questions or whatever, or if you don't want people to follow you don't have to tell them anything. But
most of my stuff's on private, so I might still reject you, but I mean, you can try.
There we go. Well, if people want to like ask you a question or get more information from you, where's the best place for people to contact you?
Facebook.
Just your name? Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Lauren Boyce.
Sweet. Anything else?
That's
cool.
it.
All right, well, thank you so much, Lauren. This was, like, really fun, actually. Yeah. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, cool. All right, see you, everybody. Thanks for listening, everybody. I really enjoyed that one, and hopefully you did, too. If you want to talk to Lauren, you can find her on Facebook, and now that she has Wi-Fi back in her life, maybe she will respond. But seriously, I really want to thank Lauren for being on the podcast and sharing all of her awesome stories with us. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. Episode 35 is up next with my friend John Lavacari. John and I have known each other since like middle school, and he's a super talented drummer and musician. And he's toured with bands all around the country. He's actually even played overseas in London. And I've always really respected his nuanced and balanced approach to lots of issues. And he's someone I've really always respected, his opinions. And also I've really respected musically. He's really, really talented. But we had an awesome conversation. He shared a lot of cool stories. So that episode will be out in just a few days. So keep it locked. If you want to support the podcast, the best way to do that is to go to iTunes and rate it 5 stars, even though you might not be listening on iTunes. And I know I hate iTunes too. iTunes is like the worst. But if you go in there, rate it 5 stars, and leave a little review of what you like about the podcast, or maybe even some constructive criticism, I would greatly appreciate that. And if you know anybody that might be interested in the kind of stuff that we talk about on this podcast, or any of the stuff that Lauren talked about today, don't be afraid to share it with a friend, That's what good friends do. Share it with another friend. Say, yo, I know you're into this kind of stuff. Check out this podcast. That would really go a long way. And if you want to follow me, you can go to my website, andrewdeitch.com. You can find links to all my social media stuff. And yeah, this is the best place to find me. Seriously, thank you guys so much for listening. You guys are the best. And I wish you all the best luck in the world. I will talk to you guys in a couple days on episode 35. Peace.